MUSC-191 class, welcome to my music room. If it's a great day, I wake up every morning and I come to the piano and I either practice or write music. What I'm doing in this room is I'm going to introduce my 24 preludes. If you're in this course for the first time, you may have heard some upper year students mention, when are you going to do your 24 preludes? And in fact, in previous versions of this course, I have usually played a composition once a week. For a number of years, I actually played the Chopin Preludes, and then I wrote my own preludes. Because this course is 24 weeks long and there are 24 preludes, it was a nice way of having a little concert, sharing my music, and allowing us to have a discussion about what it's like to be a composer, and perhaps inspire some of you to try your own hand at writing music, to take some of the things we're learning this year and be creative, but also as a performer to maybe get you interested in playing new music. And this is what music is all about. It's finding different ways to connect musically. So I'm just going to give you a quick introduction to the prelude as a form, because you have to write one this term. I'm going to give you a chord progression, and then I'm going to divide the class into a number of different keys, because I don't want to mark everything in C major. And you've got to compose a prelude. So what is a prelude? A prelude is whatever you want it to be. Oh, that's great. That's easy. However, there are some general characteristics that tend to work quite well. One, preludes tend to not so much be a real melodic piece, although certainly some composers wrote some extraordinarily melodically expressive preludes. But often they're more focused on finding a pattern and having that pattern driven harmonically. So the chordal progression, the modulations, the dissonance that's created between the harmony really drives the piece. One of the great composers of the prelude, and indeed the prelude really comes from the Baroque period, and this is the period in which this composer wrote, is Johann Sebastian Bach. He wrote preludes for all sorts of things, for cello suites, for orchestral suites, for just all sorts of things. But specifically, he's known for the prelude and fugue, which was a very common Baroque form. The reason for that is the fugue is very contrapuntal and very intense. And it's nice if you warm up the key and the room and the piece by having a prelude that's a little more improvisatory. So, with Bach's prelude and fugues, what he was trying to prove, because they're called Das Wahltemperklavier, and the reason for that title is he wrote a prelude and fugue in all different 24 keys. That proved that if you used equal temper tuning, you could make everything work without having to use, a pure tuning. There's a whole course on acoustics that is often taught just on the development of the equal temper system, so won't go into that now. Bach had so much fun writing his first book of 24 Prelude and Fugues. Later on in his life, he wrote another book. Wow. When Bach put his preludes and fugues together, they go up chromatically, such that he starts in C major, C minor, C sharp major, C sharp minor, until he eventually gets to B minor. Bach knew he was writing something of incredible importance when he wrote these prelude and fugues. And I think he went out of his way to find a C major prelude, the very first one, that is relatively simple, but incredibly profound. It's just broken chords, but there's an implied bass line, there is a bass line that drives it, with an implied melody that, some composer named Charles Gounod actually went back and actually wrote out a melody to the words Ave Maria. I hate that piece, because I just want this prelude to be pure in its simple piano form. So here's the opening, just to give you an idea of what happens with a pattern, although I dare say all of you will have heard this piece before. Now, obviously the piece goes on much longer than that, but what Bach's done is he started with This voicing of a C major triad is really all 5 notes going up triadically, and then through a series of patterns, he ends up in G major with the exact same voicing. And in fact, he's going to keep going, and he's going to end up down back in C major in the same voicing he more or less started with, and then a little bit of chromaticism, and it'll end in C major. Another composer who really liked the prelude form is Chopin. And in fact, part of that comes from the fact that in the Romantic period, they really liked shorter pieces that often implied a mood that didn't go anywhere. Brahms writes intermezzos, Schubert writes impromptus, Beethoven writes bagatelles even, a little bit of nothing. And with Chopin, he did not necessarily or really like his contemporary composers. He ran across Mendelssohn, love-hate relationship with Liszt. His real favorite composer was Bach, and he took Bach Prelude and Fugues everywhere, and I think Chopin's love of Bach really creates his chromatic harmony and his intensity, and everything that Chopin does really has more of a direct line to what Bach was doing. However, when Chopin writes his preludes, he's not going to write fugues. He's going to write these pieces that are a variety of colors and moods. It's almost like they're a compendium of everything that's possible with the piano, and they're very, in some ways, abstract pieces, but often very diverse pieces. They're highly contrasted. The other thing that Chopin does is, when he wrote these pieces, he assumed you'd play quite a few of them as a group. He never imagined you'd play all of them in a concert, which is what we do in this century, last century too, because everyone likes to just hear everything Chopin wrote, so let's sit down and play all the preludes in a concert. But Chopin structured them so that they actually flow well, going from one to another because of the way the keys move. So he starts in C major and then goes to A minor. Then he goes up a perfect fifth to G major, and then the fourth one's in E minor. And then up another fifth to D major, and then finally, or not finally, but number 6 is B minor. So that the keys flow, major, relative, minor. Up a dominant, or fifth, and then we've got the that new key, and then it's relative minor. So here's what Chopin does. Again, he comes up with a pattern in C major. He's got the Bach model, so actually he does pretty much the same thing Bach does, in a slightly tighter framework, and with a little more rhythmic ingenuity, because that's what Chopin was all about. Again, there we have the opening. Chopin goes back to the same chord voicing. Okay, and he's got the 5th on the top as opposed to the 6th or the 3rd. All right, so that gives you a little bit of Bach and then a little bit of Chopin, and now I'm going to give you a little bit of Burge. And what I do in this set is that I definitely start in C major and I go to the minor keys. One of the things that is going to become apparent when I play some of these is I do use some inside the piano techniques. And I'll talk about that more later when we get to the second one, in fact, that actually really uses some extended piano techniques. I always try and use them in a very tonal way. Indeed, this set of preludes in some ways are my most tonal pieces, because I felt if I was going to show 24 keys, I better stick with the key. So, by way of inspiration for you to write your preludes, here is my C major prelude. I should say that my plan is I will record one of these a week. In previous versions of the course, I would have played these on every Friday in class. We're a little bit behind right now because I just had so many things to set up, so it's actually nice to, unpack my piano and get my video recorder out, and I'll make these. And I'll post one a week. Probably I'll do one during the reading week break and then in the examination period. And then in the winter term, I'll try and do one every week of the term. At least that would be the idea. But we seem to be on a different pandemic time zone, so who knows when things get done.